Karen destroys my brand new solar panels overnight, claiming they violate HOA rules. She smirks when I demand payment for damages. Little does she know, I secretly own the power grid supplying electricity to the entire neighborhood. Now it's time to show her who really controls the power. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. I never thought I'd end up in a war with my homeowners association, but looking back, it was inevitable. My name's Alex Chin, and I moved to Oak Ridge Estates last summer after landing a promotion at the renewable energy firm where I work as an electrical engineer. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Quiet streets lined with maple trees, well-maintained homes, and a community pool that sparkled in the sunlight. What I didn't realize was that behind all this suburban perfection lurked a power-hungry HOA president just waiting to make my life miserable. My troubles began 3 weeks after moving in. I'd spent most of that time getting my house in order, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and planning my dream project, a state-of-the-art solar panel system for my roof. As someone who dedicated their career to renewable energy, I was excited to practice what I preached. I'd researched everything thoroughly, checking local regulations and HOA guidelines to make sure I was in compliance. "You're all set, Mr. Chin," said Tyler, the installation manager, as his team finished mounting the last of my 18 solar panels. "This system will generate more than enough power for your home. You might even be able to sell some back to the grid." I beamed with pride looking at the sleek black panels angled perfectly to catch maximum sunlight. "They look fantastic. How long until they're operational?" "We'll hook everything up to your electrical system tomorrow and run final tests. By this time tomorrow you'll be powered by the sun." Tyler grinned, sharing my enthusiasm for renewable energy. That evening I sat on my porch with a cold beer, admiring the panels and calculating how quickly they'd pay for themselves. At my estimate, I'd break even in about 6 years, and after that it would be basically free electricity for decades. Plus, I was reducing my carbon footprint significantly. It felt good to be doing something positive for the environment. The next morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for my solar panels to start generating power. I was in the yard examining the inverter box when a shiny black Mercedes pulled into my driveway. A woman stepped out wearing designer sunglasses, pressed khaki pants, and a polo shirt with the Oak Ridge Estates logo embroidered on it. Her hair was styled in that specific, "I need to speak to the manager" cut that had become infamous on the internet. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I straightened up, putting on my most neighborly smile. "Good morning. I'm Alex Chin, just moved in a few weeks ago. Margaret Wilkins, president of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association." She didn't offer to shake hands. Instead, her gaze traveled up to my roof, and her lips pinched together like she'd bitten into a lemon. "Those need to come down immediately." "I'm sorry?" I was genuinely confused. "The solar panels?" "Yes, those hideous things." She gestured dismissively. "They're a violation of HOA regulations and an eyesore to boot." "I checked the HOA guidelines very carefully before installation," I explained patiently. "There's nothing prohibiting solar panels. In fact, State Law SB 178 specifically prevents HOAs from banning solar installations." Margaret's face tightened. "Perhaps you didn't read carefully enough. Section 8, Paragraph 3 of our bylaw states that all external modifications must be approved by the Architectural Committee. You never submitted an application." "That section refers to structural changes," I countered, still keeping my cool. "Solar panels are classified as energy devices, not structural modifications. And again, State Law SB 178 explicitly says HOAs cannot prohibit them." "I don't care about state laws," she snapped, her voice rising. "This is my HOA. I've been president for 15 years and I know what's best for this community. Those panels are an eyesore and will lower property values for everyone. You have 48 hours to remove them, or you'll face daily fines of $100 until they're gone." "Margaret, I understand your concern, but I've done my research. These panels are perfectly legal and frankly they'll increase my property value, not decrease it. Green energy features are a major selling point these days." She stepped closer, invading my personal space. "Listen to me carefully, Mr. Chin. I don't know how things worked wherever you came from, but in Oak Ridge Estates we follow rules." "My rules? You have 48 hours. With that, she spun on her heel and marched back to her Mercedes. I watched her drive away, feeling a mixture of confusion and anger. Was she serious? I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of the installation, documenting everything just in case. Then I went inside and dug out the HOA guidelines I'd received when purchasing the house. reading over them one more time. Just as I thought, nothing specifically prohibited solar panels, and the section sheet cited was clearly about structural changes like adding a deck or changing the roofline. Over the next 2 days, I sent emails to the other HOA board members, explaining the situation and citing the relevant state laws that protected my right to install solar panels. I also reached out to a lawyer friend who specialized in property law, who confirmed I was within my rights. Not a single HOA board member responded to my emails. On the third day, I left for work early for a meeting with clients interested in large-scale solar installations for their business campuses. It was a productive day and I felt good driving home, thinking about how my own panels would be generating clean energy. That feeling evaporated the moment I turned onto my street. From a distance, something looked wrong with my roof. As I got closer, my stomach dropped. The solar panels, my beautiful, expensive solar panels, were destroyed. Glass was scattered across my yard and the metal frames were bent and twisted, hanging off my roof like broken limbs. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out of my car, staring in horror at the destruction. My neighbor Dave came rushing over from his house across the street. "Alex, I'm so sorry," he said, looking genuinely distressed. "I tried to stop them, but they threatened to fine me if I interfered." "Who?" I demanded, though I already knew the answer. "Margaret and 2 guys from the maintenance crew. They showed up around noon with ladders and tools. Said they had authority from the HOA to remove unauthorized installations. I started recording on my phone when I saw what they were doing, but they weren't just removing the panels, they were deliberately smashing them." Dave showed me the video he'd taken on his phone. There was Margaret, directing 2 men with crowbars as they pried my solar panels from the mounts and then stomped on them. The glass shattered, and Margaret actually smiled at the sound. "I'm going to call the police," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Already did," Dave replied. "They said to file a report, but since it's an HOA dispute, they're not likely to do much." I thanked Dave for trying to help and for documenting what happened. Then I went inside to call my insurance company and a lawyer. The destruction of property was worth at least $32,000, not counting the damage to my roof. This wasn't just an HOA being strict. This was criminal vandalism. While on the phone with my insurance agent, I received an email from Margaret with the subject line, "Violation resolved." The body of the message simply read, "The unauthorized installation has been removed. You will be billed for the removal services. Future violations will result in additional fines." I was speechless. She was billing me for destroying my property? The audacity was almost impressive. After filing the police report and insurance claim, I sent Margaret an invoice for $32,575, the cost of the solar system plus estimated roof repairs. Her response came within the hour, a threatening letter about unauthorized installations, and a notice that I would be fined $1,000 for forcing the HOA to take corrective action. She refused to pay a penny for the damages. That's when I decided it was time to play my ace. What Margaret didn't know, what no one in Oak Ridge Estates knew, was that 6 months before moving in, I had purchased a small energy company called Sunvolt Energy. The previous owner was looking to retire, and I saw it as a solid investment opportunity related to my field. What made this purchase particularly interesting was that Sunvolt owned and operated the electrical substation and grid infrastructure that supplied power to Oak Ridge Estates and 2 neighboring communities. In other words, every house in the neighborhood, including Margaret's, received power through my company. I hadn't made this information public because it wasn't relevant to my day-to-day life in the neighborhood. I had a management team that handled the operations, and I was mainly a silent owner who reviewed quarterly reports. But now, this ownership gave me an idea. That evening, I logged into the Sunvolt control systems from my home office. The grid for Oak Ridge Estates was divided into several sectors for maintenance purposes. I pulled up the HOA board member list I'd found online and cross-referenced their addresses with my grid map. Then, with a few keystrokes, I initiated an emergency maintenance protocol for the specific grid sectors that supplied power to all 7 HOA board members' homes, including Margaret's. At exactly 7 p.m., the power went out in those houses. The rest of the neighborhood remained perfectly lit. I waited, watching through my front window as confusion spread. Lights were going on and off in houses down the street as people checked to see who had power and who didn't. At 7:30 p.m., my doorbell rang. It was Margaret, holding a flashlight and looking considerably less confident than she had that morning. "There seems to be a problem with the power," she said, her tone somewhat less commanding than usual. "My house and several others on the board have no electricity, but everyone else does. Do you know anything about this?" I leaned against my doorframe, enjoying the warm glow of my fully powered home. Yes, I heard about that. The affected homes receive power through Line B, which requires emergency maintenance due to potential safety concerns. But that's impossible, she frowned. The whole neighborhood uses the same power grid. Actually, that's not entirely accurate, I replied calmly. As the owner of Sunvolt Energy, I can confirm that the neighborhood grid is divided into several sectors for maintenance and safety purposes. Her flashlight wavered. You own Sunvolt Energy? I do. It's the company that operates your power infrastructure. As for years, I purchased it before moving here. Margaret's face went pale in the flashlight's glow. But you can't just cut off our power. I haven't cut off anything, Margaret. This is standard emergency maintenance to prevent potential hazards. Safety first, right? That's what you're always saying about neighborhood regulations. This is outrageous, she sputtered. You're doing this because of the solar panels. I kept my expression neutral. I would never use my position to retaliate against someone who illegally destroyed my property worth over $30,000. That would be wrong. I'm simply ensuring all safety protocols are followed for Line B. It needs extensive testing before power can be safely restored. How long will this testing take? She demanded. Hard to say. Could be days. Maybe weeks. These things can't be rushed when safety is involved. This is blackmail. Actually, it's infrastructure management. It's all in the contract the HOA signed with Sunvolt 10 years ago. Maybe you didn't read it carefully enough. I couldn't resist throwing her own words back at her. Margaret stormed off into the darkness, the beam of her flashlight bouncing erratically as she went. By morning, my phone was flooded with calls from other board members. They'd figured out pretty quickly that the power outage wasn't random, especially after Margaret had presumably filled them in on our conversation. By noon, I had arranged a special emergency meeting with the HOA board at the community center. They all showed up looking tired and unwashed, having spent a night without power. I laid out my terms simply: a written apology from the HOA, full compensation for my destroyed solar panels and roof damage, and a new HOA policy explicitly permitting renewable energy installations without prior approval. And if we refuse? Asked Bill Thompson, the HOA treasurer. Then I hear Line B might have more extensive problems than initially thought, I replied evenly. The maintenance team estimates it could take months to ensure everything is up to code. They capitulated within an hour. By afternoon, I had a check in hand covering all damages, a formal apology letter signed by every board member, and a draft of the new policy that would be distributed to all homeowners the following week. 2 days later, my new solar panels were being installed, and mysteriously the safety concerns with Line B resolved themselves. Power was fully restored to all homes in the neighborhood. Margaret stepped down as HOA president the following week, citing personal reasons. News travels fast in small communities. Within a month, everyone in Oak Ridge Estates knew what had happened, though accounts varied on the details. Some painted me as a vigilante hero standing up to HOA tyranny, while others saw me as manipulative and vindictive. The truth, as always, was somewhere in between. What couldn't be denied was the result. By spring, 5 other houses in the neighborhood had installed solar panels. The new HOA president, my neighbor Dave, was much more reasonable and focused on actual community improvements rather than petty power plays. Margaret still lived in the neighborhood but avoided eye contact whenever we passed each other. And my electricity bill remained at a beautiful $0 per month. Sometimes, when I'm sitting on my porch in the evening, watching the sunset reflect off my solar panels, I think about the strange series of events that led to this moment. I never set out to be at war with anyone, let alone win such a decisive victory. All I wanted was to harness the power of the sun to light my home. Ironically, it was by controlling the flow of electricity that I finally brought some enlightenment to Oak Ridge Estates. Sometimes justice shines as brightly as the sun itself.